Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story Podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater, and welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. Today's guest is Jane Tabachnick. She is an award-winning content and publicity strategist and mentor. She works with mission-driven entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, and authors to help them become highly visible and create authority, positioning, and thought leadership. And I love, looking forward to really talking to Jane about the positioning of thought leadership, because we really want to look at all of ourselves today being thought leaders. Jane has had a interesting background, has done and made an impact in a variety of different things. One of the things she does today is she is the founder of Simply Good Press, a book publishing company. Jane has helped over 200 authors achieve best-selling status, and that is impressive and important, again, in that thought leadership. Jane, thanks for joining me here today.
Hi, Ivy. I'm so excited to be here.
So tell me a little bit, we've known each other on and off for years. The New York City network, it's a beautiful thing. And it's a beautiful thing as we continue to build relationships, which I talk about a lot, is you didn't even, I didn't reach out to you. You didn't reach out to me. You have somebody who does, podcast bookings for your organization, for you and your clients. And they're like, oh, Jane, you should, be on Her Success Story with Ivy Slater. She goes, oh my God, just call Ivy. I know her, right? In the iterations of business, share with us a little bit of your background, where you started and how you've come to build the brand you are today.
Yeah, so I'm actually a recovering fashion designer. We share that fashion industry experience. I love my work there. However, it's a tough industry, as you know, but what I experienced there, which led me to where I am today in a non-linear way, was having my own collection. I was having trouble getting visibility, being seen, and no one knew who I was when I was starting out. So no one would take my calls. This is pre-internet days, so old school. So I didn't have an internet presence. People could just find me. I couldn't optimize myself with search engine and show up. So I had to get on their radar, and I had to become visible so that when I put in a call to a department store buyer or to a boutique, they'd say, oh, we've been reading about you. We've seen your designs. So that's how I got into publicity. It was a necessity in a way. So it was
like, I'll refer to that as, you kind of backdoored, you said, here's the goal. Here's the obstacle. How do I navigate the obstacle? And how you navigated the obstacle ended up being a business today.
Exactly. So it's funny how you find what you enjoy doing and what you're good at. And so the publicity for my fashion collections was a game changer. The doors opened. It was like, oh, we've heard of you. We want to see your designs. Whereas before I was toast. I couldn't get anyone to take my call. And it's hard calling on the phone. And also you're talking about something very visual. So you can describe it, but there's nothing like seeing it. So it was really a pivotal moment. And so when I decided to leave the fashion business, I took stock of what I had done and what I enjoyed doing and what I thought were some skills and strengths. And that was my PR and marketing. So I transitioned first into doing some more traditional marketing advertising. I worked for a boutique advertising agency at first, and then the internet was born. I discovered it and I got really excited. And this sounds so ridiculous today, but back then when it was new, I thought, wow, this is going to be a great medium for visibility and sharing your message. This is going to be big. I was so excited about it. So I left the agency I was with because they had no interest in getting involved in the internet. And went
so they weren't a forward thinker at that time. And also, larger brands, agencies, and things like that, especially if they have any size to it, they take on new, interesting, like these new nuances on a very slow basis because they really have to test the waters, see where they're putting their money, where a smaller organization can really like just say, hey, I could go play in this sandbox and see what we could do. Let's do it, because your overhead and your risk is so much less.
Exactly. And also with smaller agencies, they need that competitive edge. So being on the cutting edge, so to speak, is an advantage for them that the larger agencies may not need right away. They catch up. As you said, they're a little bit risk averse, and it also takes longer for things to change and get implemented in a bigger organization. So it makes sense.
I love that. So when were you born as a PR agency? Let's just look at these the statistics here for a sec.
Yeah. So my first agency of my own was a digital strategy agency, which was focused on websites and helping people get set up with email newsletters. But
about that visibility space.
Exactly. So the common thread was they needed the visibility. At first, it seemed like it was just some search engine optimization, but it was really more than that. And it kept coming back to the visibility. So over time, we shifted to that. So it was about not just visibility in terms of traditional PR, but also taking advantage of the web with what became content strategy or content marketing and social media.
And so now you've launched, so now you have this whole PR agency presence, and you've niched it down because, and I love that. I think it's important that, we always think we can go big if we go broad, and the smaller you go, the bigger you can go. So share a little bit about some of the new things that you've added to, your repertoire, and most importantly, why?
Yeah, so not new because we've been publishing for 12 years, but that was a really big addition. And I have to credit a gal that I met at a conference. I hadn't been thinking about adding books. It totally made sense. And it was a conversation with someone sitting next to me at a conference where she said, have you ever thought about doing books? It would be the perfect addition and complement. And I said, no, I hadn't. So she and I thought about starting a publishing company together. That didn't end up happening, but I decided to go forward with it. So the focus has really been helping those change makers, coaches, consultants, healers, professionals, become authors, get visibility, and leverage their books to grow their business and achieve whatever goals they have.
And, everybody's like, oh, I'm going to write, I need to write a book before I do this. So I'm going to write a book. And I know my purpose, my business is going to break through once I write a book. There are so many cliches. And having written a couple and working on the third, I'll always say it's a great asset to a business, but it's an asset, and some people fall down that black hole that they have to do X before Y, right? They have to have a book before they can build the business. And where do you, in the clients you see, how do you guide them, and what's the asset here?
Yeah, so one of the most important things, and I'm so glad you mentioned this, Ivy, is expectations and goals around becoming an author. What it is, how much work is involved, and what goals are realistic. I had someone referred to me from one of my favorite clients, an incredibly successful person who'd written a book, and she had a platform, so she could certainly have achieved some big goals. But she said to me, I don't want to spend any time marketing this book, but I want to sell 1 million copies. And I said, best of luck to you. I couldn't help you. And if you're not willing to market it, to be honest, I don't think you're going to find anyone to help you with that. Because as you know, Ivy, books take so much work to market. The work really begins, and this is a harsh reality, a harsh truth, but the work really begins when you finish the book.
Touche.
Right.
And that's not to say the process of the writing a book is an enormous commitment.
Yes. Well,
even with support.
Absolutely. And I think we discussed this recently. There are books and there are books, so there are the books that you can write in 2 hours. You've seen these ads, and you can take a little report and publish it on Amazon as a book, and that it's a book. However, that's not the same as a well-researched or written book that's really taken you time to put together, to work with designers, editors, the whole process that professionals go through, that you've gone through, and I take my clients through to become published authors, because it's a representation of their brand, and it should get that kind of love and care and represent them as they want to be seen. Especially a lot of times when they come to me, and I think your clients are the same, they're looking to scale, they're looking to grow their business and their audience. So you really want to make sure you're putting your best foot forward and looking the way you'd want to look to this new audience, and up-leveling your audience through your book. And that can happen.
I love how you say up-leveling your audience through your book. Let's expand a little bit about that, because that's a beautiful tidbit. Can you give us as opposed to just talking about it, is there any examples or story you could share that actually shows that as an example? Because I think and listeners, just so you know, I just threw Jane under the bus. This has not been prepped. She doesn't have the story on deck at all. But I think it's really important to, before you sit down on PR, on publicity, on writing a book, to really, really know what you're looking to achieve in your business by doing this. Because it's an investment. And I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about time. I was sitting and writing a pitch last night at 9 something in bed that was due today. I have another one due at the end, right?
Yes.
We have, and that's after my day job, after my family time is to sit down and write. So I think it's important when you say about really up-leveling. Did I buy you enough time to think of something?
Yeah. So I think first, I just want to speak to what you just said. And it's so true. Being strategic and working smarter is really so important. So taking the time to think, what are my goals? What am I looking to achieve? And then also doing a reality check, like that author I mentioned, that wasn't a realistic expectation to sell 1,000 books. Even, most books, even traditionally published, sell a couple of hundred. I know that's kind of crazy, but that's a fact. So to sell 1 million is, you're talking about Obama.
J.K. Rowling.
Exactly.
And Michelle Obama. And yes.
And a lot of effort goes into that. So that said, so up-leveling, so just the mere accomplishment, and it is a major accomplishment, of publishing a book instantly elevates your positioning as an expert and an authority. If someone sees your book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, whatever platform, say you wrote a book about higher math. I don't know why that came to mind, but
okay,
you will immediately be seen as an expert on that, because there's an assumption that you would only have published a book on that topic if you were truly an expert on it. So no one's going to question the expertise. There's an instant recognition, association, and elevation to that authoritative position. So that's one thing. The other thing about it is it will show up in Google search results. So Amazon being the big gorilla in the space, your book is on Amazon. Hopefully you've also created an author page, which they offer, and those will show up typically on the first page of Google. So the first thing anyone sees when they Google you, and everyone Googles you, whether it's a prospect, an event planner who wants to book you, a podcast host, you're being Googled, and that's what they're going to see. So that's instant positioning, positive brand association. Oh, you're on Amazon, you're featured there. So, all of those things help up-level you. And then, of course, if you've done a great job with an attractive cover design, good book description, then it just adds to this incredible impression of you as someone who has to be taken seriously, and someone that the people who are checking you out or reading your book will want to get to know and want to work with.
So share a little bit. I'm curious, we're past a year into this pandemic. Oh, there's big lights. It's getting warmer. We're starting to be able to socialize outside. And I think it's a great time to look back of how we, your clients, you as a business leader, what was birthed out of the pandemic, as opposed to, we always have choices. We could see as the glass is half full, or we could see the glass is half empty. It's the same glass, it's the same water level. And I'm always going to be the person who's going to look at, wow, look, that glass is half full. Isn't that fabulous? In that, what I'm looking back at, and I'm looking at my clients and what we've been working for this year, is what can be developed next? What are we learning? Where can we grow from? So what have you seen through your clients and your own businesses of what's being birthed come now, a good portion into 2021 and then forward?
Yeah, so I think that human connection has always been important, but I think we all got to experience this past year how much that means to us. And so I know that I've been very strategic about who I spend time with, even virtually, because you have just so much time and bandwidth, and it's been a stressful year no matter what your year has been like. There's no question the world has been upside down. So a lot of it is about relationships, and what's been happening in the media and businesses is that there have been a lot of companies closing, and media rooms have been, or newsrooms and magazines have been cutting staff. So if there were 10 of us to one journalist before, now there are, 100 of us to one journalist. So building those relationships with the media is really important. And I have a process I call Hug an Influencer. And it's really just following people that you respect and want to have a relationship with, sharing their content. And I'm talking about authentically, not just sharing everything just to, get in their good graces, but authentically helping them and appreciating them, because, you send out your newsletter or you post something on social media and you hear crickets and you start to doubt yourself, and, the whole little mind games go on, and you think, is anyone listening? Why am I bothering? It's so much effort. So just giving people that support is so valuable. And then when you are ready to pitch the media, you're already on their radar. Your name is familiar. They appreciate that you've shared their content, commented, help them get that visibility. So that's part of what I've been teaching my clients. And I just started a program to help them with that. I have a successful author who has a number of books. And she said to me this year, we've known each other a couple of years, she said, Jane, I really think the one thing missing for me is PR. I need your help. I need your brain.
Absolutely.
And she does an amazing job on her website and her social media. So I had to agree with her. It was all what's called owned media. It was her own website, her own social profiles, but she didn't have that third-party credibility from appearing in the media or either being written about or publishing bylined articles. So starting to do that was really a game changer for her. And I'll just share with you quickly, going back to the Hug an Influencer, she started doing that and was having a lot of fun with it. And she was doing it with a guy that she didn't realize what a big deal he was. She just liked his content and his vibe. And one day on Twitter, he said to her, hey, what do you do? I love your content. And she told him, and he said, we got to get you on my podcast. And she called me and she said, oh my God, he's got the biggest podcast. And he's one of the top podcasters out there.
It's so interesting, right? As we truly actually take the actions. And you're right, there's, and I love the way you brand this as owned media. And that's everything we do. It's her success story. It's Ivy Slater, Slater Success Owned Media. It's our LinkedIn Live show. It's our website. It's everything, all the content we're putting out on the LinkedIn, the Instagrams, the Twitters, the Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. And then it's the corroboration for when we get picked up in, glam and ladders and ink and this and that and the other thing, that all of a sudden other people look to you and say, oh, and I'm in potential business relationships, huge business relationships with massively global companies. And they like to see that, the people they're about to invest in, that our content isn't just good, and our delivery isn't just good, and we're assets, but we have credibility. And I love, so you're going to do a program that like the average layman can actually, that's awesome.
Yes, so it's called Magnify Your Message, and it teaches people not just how to build those relationships, but really how to come up with a strategy, understand their audience, where they should be spending time, because that's important, and also how to republish the press that they get. So this sounds crazy, but when you get press, which is a fabulous thing, and by the way, it's often referred to as earned media, because you've earned the right to be in front of someone's audience who they are very strategic about, and don't just put anyone in front of. And that's not my model. Those are part of what's called the peso model: owned, earned, shared. But anyhow, so you earn the right to be in front of these people, and it gives you that third-party credibility. And you're so right, Ivy. Companies want to see that because it confirms for them that you are who they think you are, and they've made a good decision. So people doubt themselves a little bit, but when they get outside confirmation, they appreciate that. So that's really valuable. And it is that third-party credibility. It's almost like the media is endorsing you. They're not technically, but it's perceived that way.
I think that's fabulous. And, listeners are regular listeners to Her Success Story. You see, today's interview is a little different. Jane and I have known each other for a long time, and I just value her insight and I know I have put a lot of investment, and I'm not always just talking money, I'm talking time into, myself and Slater Success. Oh, that's funny. Slater Success is, PR out there. So I thought to bring Jane on today, listeners, and really get some insight for all of us leaders. Jane, how can our listeners learn more about you and your company and get more of your backstory and understand what you do?
Yeah, sure. So they can go to simplygoodpress.com, and I have a new visibility assessment. It's really fun. People get nervous, like, oh, you're going to grade me. No, trust me, it's fun. And it's really just designed to give you kind of a benchmark of where you are and what potential opportunities there might be for you to get more visibility and authority positioning.
I love that. And I have to tell you, listeners, I'm going to be jumping in and checking on that assessment myself, seeing how Slater Success is holding. How are we doing out there? Is there room to grow? And honestly, there's always room to grow.
Exactly.
Jane, one tip or learning lesson going forward for our listeners?
I think it's just to be curious and to be open. I'm not saying chase shiny objects, but there's a new platform, I know we don't have time, but called Clubhouse. Yeah. And that can be a great place to get some visibility, authority positioning, and make some connections.
Love that. Stay tuned, listeners, as we might be exploring more on Clubhouse. Jane, thank you so much. Listeners, of course, I always say hit subscribe. We come into your inbox every Monday morning with fresh interviews and content for you to be able to grow, expand, smile, and have a good time with. Most importantly, please take a moment and leave a little bit of a note. What was your biggest takeaway today? And what are you going to do to implement it? We spend time learning a lot, and I appreciate everybody who pops into Her Success Story. We love to see what are you learning, and most importantly, how we can support you in implementing. See you next time.
Bye.
To shine.